You walk into class and the teacher says, take a test and find a seat. You're like, a test? He's like, yeah, the midterm exam. Didn't you know? You're like, I didn't. Proceed to take the test and go and sit down. You look at question number 1. You're like, oh snap, I don't know what this is. You look over to your right and you see the answer to question 1. You jot it down. You look over to the left, you see the answer to question 2. You jot it down. And then from those answers you figure out the rest of the test and you give it back to the teacher. Let's try that again. It's the night before the exam. You're studying hard. You've been studying hard for a week now. You come into class, you take your exam, and you go sit down. Complete your test in 2 minutes, you give it back to the teacher. Regardless of what the grades were for both these scenarios, what is the difference between the two scenarios? Of course, the first one wasn't prepared. The second one was prepared. What we call that is that you have a background. You come in to a situation already knowing what you might face. So why is it important to become prepared rather than unprepared? Well, because when you're prepared, you have your own answers, your own background to compare with other answers and other information externally, rather than being unprepared where you're only dependent on other people's answers. In life, there's always going to be situations where you're going to be faced with questions and you need an answer. You're going to be faced with a situation and you need to make a decision. There's always going to be a question and answer. It's very important to have a background. And most people gain this background from their parents raising them in a certain way, giving them certain teachings and advice. So how can you obtain it if you haven't when you were young? I have a formula which I use that helps me create and develop my background in life, which allows me to make safer and wiser decisions. There are 3 parts to this formula. First is exposure, second is validation, and then third is influence. Number 1 is exposure. And basically in most situations in life, it's better to use your eyes and ears and restrain more from using your mouth. Whenever I come across a new group of people, or I enter a new room, or I am in an area where I don't know, I usually just sit quietly and listen and look around and observe my surroundings. It's a better way of getting exposed to what environment you are in around you. You'll start to learn things faster. You'll start to get to know people better. You'll know people better than they know themselves sometimes, just by observing and hearing rather than just talking. It's always better to ask the question than to give answers all the time. For example, let's say you just turned 21 and now you're able to drink, and you and your friends are just leaving the bar or nightclub or wherever you're at, and you guys are all under the influence. One of your friends says, let's just take the car home rather than calling a cab. It's way cheaper and we don't have to waste money on taxi, and my house is just down the road. Why not? Logically, you might agree. So you guys get into his car and go home. Part 2 is validation. Having someone you can share your experiences with. Usually someone older than you, who have already gone through life and may have experienced situations that you are right now. And most likely they're going to be your parents. It's always good to share what you've gone through with your parents, just for validation, for advice. They might just listen to you and that's it, and that's okay. And if it's not, it might be your mentor or someone that you look up to in your life. So with the example we were on earlier, you get home and you tell your parents that this is what happened. We left the bar and then we went home driving in our own car under the influence. Your parent is most likely going to tell you that's not right and explain to you why. Part 3 is influence. And it's basically getting influence from a scholarly source. Listening to a lecture or a podcast or a video or reading a book that will increase your knowledge, give you a background in certain situations. So for our example earlier, you might now come across a book about driving under the influence or watch a video, and you'll get to know more about what the circumstances are and what you could risk if you drive under the influence. So next time you'll be in that situation, you'll have an answer. You might say, okay, it might be expensive to use the taxi, but is it worth it? Is it more expensive than risking our life? If we lose our life driving home or kill someone driving home, is that less expensive than paying $10, $15 to a taxi cab? And that's a more logical answer to give. Having a background will help you and your friends and others make wise and safe decisions, because you'll have an answer to throw out and compare to other answers instead of depending only on external answers. So the 3-part formula is using your eyes and ears more than using your mouth when you're exposed with information. Ask questions rather than just giving answers. Seek advice from someone you look up to, most likely your parents. Share your experiences with them. Become close to your parents or the person you look up to. And third is getting influenced from scholarly sources, articles, videos, and reading books. Here are 2 books that have helped me a lot. First one is How Could You Do That? And the second one is How to Win Friends and Influence People. Links are in the description below. So long.